Here we have the Renault Kwid, and this one is a little personal. Because when it first debuted in 2015, I was pretty excited. Small cars from that side of the world have the potential to become icons. Small, pokey little things with clean lines and heaps of charm, and at first glance, that's what I expected. I really like the way the Kwid looks. Clean lines that come together to make up a familiar form. Unfortunately, as time moved on, I actually got to meet the Kwid in person. And that's when things started to change. I got the feeling that it might not live up to the high hopes I had before. People also started complaining about the Kwid and the way it was put together. The mention of skinny tires and poor handling. And a small 1-litre 3-cylinder engine with less than mediocre performance. It wasn't looking good from my point of view, since those things really matter to me. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's see what 120,000 Rand actually gets you if you decided to buy a Kwid just like this one today. It gets you 13-inch steel wheels with hubcaps and 3 bolts. You get a decent looking cockpit with contemporary design elements, a 7-inch touchscreen with Bluetooth audio and GPS, and this sporty little steering wheel, no controls though. Cheeky contrast cloth seats, and speaking of seating, let's see if we fit. It looks fine to me. What do you think? What? Who sits like that? If you're sitting up front, you also have fair legroom. If you scooch up a bit to make space for those in the back, looks fine. The boot or trunk is big enough for a full load of groceries. Just look. These are all perfectly proportioned grocery items, and there's still plenty of space. Look, coffee, Cocoa Pops, custard, see, it all fits. So then, it seems like a reasonable package for the price. Small, affordable, funky and cheerful. Or is it? The following is the owner's personal account of her ownership since getting the car.
The first issues that started with my Renault Kwid was a month after I bought it. There was something wrong with the immobilizer, which kept making a warning light show up. And one of the solutions to it was to use your spare key to see if that's a severe problem or not. The problem there was I had not yet received my spare key. So we took it back to them to fix it. They did, they sent it back to us and the warning light still kept coming on. So we sent it back to them again. This was in October, I bought the car in September. Then we said to them, don't bother giving us the car back until the spare key is with it. That took them 4 months, as I only, with a long fight, got a replacement car in January because they could not supply us with the spare key. Then about 3 months later, the driver's door kept locking itself and I could not open it, so I had to climb over and use the passenger door. When I went to a different Renault to get that issue fixed, they called me immediately saying that I need to take the car back to the first Renault I bought it from because they did not do the safety test before you release a car off the floor, and they can't fix the car, else they'll be liable. So I first had to take it back to them so that they can do that safety test, and then only they can fix the doors.
So that brings us into the Kwid. Please excuse the bag. I live in this area, so I don't want anyone to see me or to recognize me. Not because I don't like cheap cars, I just don't want them to think I have poor judgment. Yeah, that should do it. Oh, sorry, this mask is, I was scared that one fell off. I just needed an extra one. So, we are inside the Kwid, we are moving, and like I said before, all the acceptable things about the car pretty much stopped when we started driving. and I've spent the whole morning in the car. It's about lunchtime now. It's 22 minutes past 12. And by the way, if I start sweating profusely now, it's because I'm boiling in here and I can't put the aircon on, because if I do, I'll probably lose half the power the car has and I won't be going anywhere. So the power and the engine is usually the first thing I talk about, and in this car there isn't much to talk about, because this has a 1-litre 3-cylinder motor, and that, believe it or not, is the same as I had in my first car. My first car was a Daihatsu Sirion. I think it was an early 2000s model, and it had a 1-litre 3-cylinder engine. And the truth is, that car was pokier than this, to my memory at least. I'll go Google it and I'll check the numbers and I'll see if there's any weight to that. But that's my first impression. There really is no poke to this thing. So being a 3-cylinder, you're not going to get a great firing order. So there's not much in the name of pistons cancelling out each other's momentum. So you get a very raspy experience when you start revving it out. So I'm going to just pass this speed bump in front of me and I'm going to stretch it out in second gear just to tell you exactly what I mean. Just listen to this. Oof. That was not only not impressive, but also very it's almost like the engine was like, what are we doing? Why are you doing this? Why are we trying to be quick? That's not what we do here. So that's the engine. As I mentioned before, it makes 50 kilowatts. And that really, I don't know if that's enough these days. Some journalists have said before that it keeps up with traffic. I beg to differ, because I've been on a big main road back there earlier this morning, and it didn't really keep up. It would keep up if I turned the aircon off, and if I punted it, it kept up just well. So this car is obviously made for more densely packed countries, kind of like South Africa and originally India, believe it or not. So I guess that power might be sufficient if there's no elevation change, the road is completely flat, and you're literally just poking between first, second and third as you're going about town. Maybe it's sufficient then, but it's really quite poor. I'm not going to do any more than that. That didn't feel good. That just felt bleh. Okay, and then that will bring us on to the next part, and that is the handling. So this car does a very good job of convincing you that it's a real car. Let me explain. When you're driving like this and you're going straight at a normal speed, it quiets down a little bit and it handles the bumps fairly well, actually. I think that's down to the car's weight and the fact that you don't need much suspension for it to, just feel kind of normal. But then when you start taking corners, it's so weird how it feels like the steering wheel isn't connected to anything. In fact, I'd like to rewrite the definition of what this is in this car, because I'm not going to say steering wheel. Steering wheel implies that it steers the car in the direction that you want it to. In other words, you're able to control where the car goes. I'm going to redefine that word and I'm going to call it a suggestion donut, because you really kind of just suggest the direction you think you want to go in, and the car just kind of gets there vaguely, and you're just thankful you didn't hit anything. Because in the steering wheel, it's really like you kind of suggest, you're like, I'm suggesting right, and then the car just kind of wallows its way there. I suggest left, and it kind of wallows its way there. And the other funny thing that happens when you do that is once you turn the steering wheel, the whole body of the car leans like this. And it really surprised me when that happened the first few times. And then I remembered that when I was doing my research on this car, the actual description for it is entry-level crossover. And if you know anything about crossovers, you'll know that it's basically a small hatch that is just on stilts. It's not meant to be an off-roader or anything like that. It's just a small car that's a little higher to try and kind of meet the demands of the consumers that now want SUVs. So this kind of fits in there somewhere. And I don't know why they insist that this car must be tall and why it must feel tall. But when you take corners, You just kind of lean with the car. It's the weirdest thing. It's very disconcerting, by the way. If you take a corner that you didn't anticipate, the car's gonna it's gonna get bent out of shape pretty quickly. It's gonna go, you know, that's very weird. It's not something I associate with a little car like this. And then the creature comforts. Let's talk about the creature comforts, because you saw in the intro that this car has a touchscreen radio and a digital dial instrument cluster and electric windows. I didn't mention that in the intro, but it's got electric windows. And I want to make a point about this. I want to talk about this because we need to talk about it. Car manufacturers are getting away with something that I'm not really mad about. They are selling you cars with substandard quality, and they're blindfolding you by adding little things like this, a little touchscreen, a little cool digital instrument dial. And I'm going to keep doing this when I refer to it, because it's not really digital instrument dial. It's more just like an old Casio watch face that they've just stuck there. And they're convincing consumers that this car is up to date and worth buying and worth your time and money because of all these little lavishings. And you might get in this car for the first time, especially if you're a first time buyer, and you might see these things, you might go, oh my word. A few years ago, it only used to be Mercedes-Benz, BMW and Lexus that had these things, and now look, I've got a little touchscreen in my car. But that's fooling you. That's waving a carrot before you, and it's convincing you that you should buy this. And that's not fair. Sorry. And that's not fair. Yes, it's nice to have. I mean, it is a touchscreen. Not a touchscreen like we know them today. This is more like, remember when Nokia made their first few touchscreen phones, and it was more pressure than touch. So it's like that. But I mean, it's got Bluetooth audio, which does connect to your phone. It does have GPS that doesn't work too well from what I've heard. Apparently it takes you funny roads, and it's not always the quickest or the simplest road. And the electric windows are quite quick. I mean, look at that. That's open and shut in less time than it takes most cars just to go down. So it's got all of those things, but it is deceiving. All it's doing is pulling the wool over your eyes. So this will always be my official stance on the topic, and that's that don't let bells and whistles deceive you into buying a car that isn't really worth your money. And that's all I'm going to say about that. What the rest of the cabin is concerned, it's pretty terrible quality things everywhere you go. I mean, the door, they didn't even bother putting any sort of premium feeling material anywhere on it. Even at the place where you rest your arm, anywhere on the door cards, you won't find that. Everything is a pretty cheap feeling plastic. Although they did try on the steering wheel to put some plastic leather, is it? Yeah, to put some kind of plastic leather here, but I mean the stitching is even coming off on this one, and the car has 3,000 kilometers on it, whatever that's worth to you. Let me not lie, the seats are pretty comfortable. Objectively speaking, not a horrible seat for a car this size, but yeah, I can't help but get away from the fact that they've cut corners every single place they can. It is worth mentioning that the aircon is pretty cold. Not that I'm going to use it right now because I have a little hill to get up. There we go. So the aircon is pretty good. It does go cold, it does blow well enough, but it comes at the expense, not at speed, but of movement, because you won't go anywhere if the aircon is really on. The owner of this car never puts the aircon on because it pretty much immobilizes you. And I really wanted this review to go well today. Having spoken about the power and the handling, or rather the lack thereof, and the quality of the interior of the car, I really wanted to like this car. And having driven it the whole morning, I was really giving it opportunities to kind of make up for my previous experiences with it. But there just isn't. I can't lie to you. I can't do that. I can't put my reputation on the line and say that this is a lovely little car when it grabs every opportunity to disappoint you. I mean, there's no redeeming factor. And don't even get me started on the 0-star safety rating that this one has. because that is what it has. Yes, the later ones were updated, but this one, as it sits here and as I'm driving it, has 0 stars. It doesn't even have an airbag for the passenger. So I've tried South Africa, World, Motoring World, motoring enthusiasts, parents looking for the first car to buy for their kids. I've tried. Oh, and did I mention that I've shot a full review of this car before? I actually picked it up quite a couple of months ago, and I picked it up and I went for a drive and I reviewed it. I did everything, I took all the shots I had to. I'm actually going to put it on the screen now. I took the time to film it, I drove it, and I didn't have anything nice to say about it. And I didn't release that review. I didn't even edit the video because I went through the footage to see what I can use and to start cutting and putting them in their folders. And I realized I don't have anything nice to say, and I felt so bad I didn't edit and release a video. So how's it?
Sure.
If I gave you this car for free, would you take it?
No.
Okay, thank you. I think it's weird that a car like this is still allowed to be sold, not only in our country, but anywhere in the world, just because of how unsafe it is and how I think this is almost a human rights violation. I would probably rather take a bicycle than ride this car. And it's just weird for me. The fact that these are still being made, the fact that this thing ticked any boxes, I don't know, man. I don't know if it's worth your money. I don't know if it's worth as much as these are going for at the moment. I don't even know if it's worth half of that. In fact, I think if you do buy one of these and you pay anything more than 60 or 70,000 Rand for them, I think you're making a mistake. I think there's so many good cars out there for the money that you could buy instead of this. A second-hand car that's a whole segment up from this one will be so much better value for money and will be so much more car and will probably last you much longer. And also, people on the internet, on the few places where I have spoken about this car, have actually gone as far as calling me a classist, which I just am not. I don't mind cheap cars. In fact, I quite like the whole idea of value for your money and really squeezing as many smiles per miles as you can out of a very small budget. I'm a fan of that. The only thing is, this car that I'm sitting in is just horrible. You can call me whatever you want, it's bad. And I really wish more journalists would be a bit more honest about the cars they drive, because unfortunately people are still buying this car. People are still going to shops, going for a test drive, and for some reason they say, you know what, that's the car I gotta have. And if you had any prior knowledge about this car or someone's experience about this car, I know you wouldn't buy it because you're smart. So that's my review before I melt any further in this car. That's my review of it. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any comments, any criticism, please put it in the comments. Tell me what you think. Tell me if I'm being an idiot. Tell me if I'm right. Until I see you guys again, please be safe on the road. And by be safe, I mean don't drive a Renault Kwid. And I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching. Cheers.